All right, guys, I'm being completely silly. This is now episode, oh, 3? We've been obviously being a bit silly today, but welcome. Thank you for coming back to my IGTV series of Renegade Renaissance. And this week, we're going to talk about my biggest piece that I've painted to date, that it will be Uprising. Uprising is about 6 feet wide. Now, before that, the biggest I had painted was a 48 by 48 piece named Anarchy. That's what's behind me. Of course, you're only getting a partial glaring view. But that was the biggest piece I had painted up to date. One of my goals is to literally start painting murals. Really big, wide murals, and do large canvas pieces similar to the artist Mark Radford. It's always been a goal of mine to paint really big. What's really interesting about painting big is, as an acrylic painter, because I specifically paint in acrylic paint, the process of my layering is done pretty quickly. And so I can actually keep working on a piece consistently. When I work with something that's large, you get to a quarter of it and you think that you're halfway done, and really you're only at a quarter. So it can feel challenging and a little overwhelming, there is so much more of the canvas to do and work on. But what was great is that I took my time with Uprising, as at the point this was no date for the show. I was just making this body of work so I could actually take my time. But with Uprising, I realized I was getting into really figuring out how I was going to do this process of sort of moving away from the way that I used to work. And a little bit, I guess, more background, because I've spoken now for the past couple episodes about kind of going against this creative instinct. And I haven't really spoken too much about what my technique in the past has been. And in the past, I've been quite the colorist. I'm a very colorful painter. Colors are most of the time what I like to call the subject matter in my work. And so even as examples as you see with Anarchy, there's a lot of texture and colors into it, but the color is the foreground. It's the subject matter. It's the one that's grabbing your attention. It's the subject is what's moving within the work. And so with the process of me doing Rebel, the whole point of my muting process was to sort of do away with me being a colorist. And so, but part of the challenge for me was, how do I create a subject or a story within this work if I'm removing my old main characters, which were colors. And so with doing Rebel, I found a way or sort of a new technique to create that. And so part of that process began with texture. Before I would color and then add texture. Instead, I would do the opposite with this series. And I started obsessing with, making things look sort of old, worn, and torn down, almost like old buildings that you'd see from the old European days of Rome or Greek, when you have these old columns and stuff look really like aging, but that aging gives a character to that piece. And so I started thinking upon old walls. And with that, I thought of first creating some sort of wall marbling effect. So that's when I started bringing in the marble spray paint. And so with the marble spray paint, one of the first things I do when working on any of the pieces is it is sprayed with marble spray paint to give sort of a marbling effect to the canvas. And then I start adding my texture, and I specifically use molding and crackling paste, because molding paste is wonderful as exactly as it is. You can kind of mold it to the way you want it to look or end. And so I kind of free flow with that. And crackle paste is areas that I want the piece to become sort of three-dimensional. And the areas I don't want to be perfect. So, I tend to first layer, especially with the first layering, basically giving a foundation that isn't perfect, because that's the whole point. We don't want it to seem perfect. We want it to seem tired. We want it to seem old and worn. So let's remove the idea of perfection in this. And then with that, we add the color. And with the challenge, specifically with Rebel, is that I tried to make sure not to have too many color choices as I would with my past series, Chaos. So I really tried to limit myself with the number of colors that I would choose to create in a piece. As we see more of the evolution of the work that I talk about, you realize that there are less and less colors within it, and more texture being sort of the front runner of the work. So with Rebel, it became identifying what that process looked like. So there'd be color, and then I'd start the muting process. And I think with that piece, that I really realized how much more I wanted sort of a monochrome look with the white to push back that color, make it take a backseat, almost make it as if it didn't exist. And with other parts of the series, you can see where that struggle of that is coming in, because there are some works that just refuse to be, where the color refuses to be in the background. And it almost comes across like some of my own ways of painting. But that's what I love about the Rebel series, is that it sort of shows this evolution of work that keeps building. But with Uprising, it definitely gave me ideas of how to approach the different techniques with Rebel. And one of the things I think people always ask me is what kind of work or tools that I use, I should say, creating pieces. And I work primarily in palette knives. I don't really do any brush work unless it's to apply the final varnish on the pieces. But most of it is palette knives, a toothbrush, butter knife, spray bottle, towels, sponges. Like I use all those sort of tools to sort of create this work. And brushes are really only to help with cleaning up edges for me, or adding the final piece to it. You can get an up-close look again at Uprising through the Art Attack website, or you can also see it on my website as well. Thank you for sticking with this series. I hope this helps give some more in-depth stories to how some of this work has come. I'm trying to make sure I didn't miss anything in my notes. Next week, we are going to be talking about, the evolution of the work. Sorry, I'm like looking at my notes. We're going to talk about how this series actually evolved from the process of moving away as this colorist, becoming almost this monochrome color artist in a way, and seeing how this work kind of evolves over the process in the next couple of years. Again, come back again for the next story. Should be here in a couple of days. And again, keep leaving those comments, keep leaving any questions you have, and I will definitely be inserting some of those questions and answering them through my stories on IG. And if you are watching this on YouTube, still leave that down there, and follow me on Instagram to see if I get any of your questions answered. Thanks again, and come back next week. Maybe it won't be as quirky as it was today. Bye.